Hello, hello. What's up, everybody? My name is Mike Brown, aka ReviewKingMB, and I figured after this latest X-Men movie that came out, a little controversial, but it still came out, why not rank the X-Men movies? All of them. From my least favorite all the way to my favorite. Coming in at number 9, my least favorite of the series, X-Men The Last Stand. I hate this movie. And sure, it might have good action, some good effects, updated effects, and okay, it's one of the least running time X-Men movies. It's like the shortest one. But when you watch it as a story, as a trilogy, they wanted this to end the series with all of the flaws and the plot holes and the fact that we had 2 previous movies made by Bryan Singer, and then all of a sudden this third one comes out of nowhere and does what it does. Maybe I shouldn't say it's Brett Ratner's fault, but I in my head, I give him the blame for this pile of shit that we got. Because how many offenses does this movie have? They bring in the Angel character for what? To waste him. The Cure storyline where the government has created this cure. And why is that even here? For a debate on whether some of the mutants want to take the cure or not. Force-fed in this movie, should have been saved for another film, or they use that to make Rogue take the cure, which pisses me off on so many levels. But she does it out of love, even worse. Or you kill off Cyclops in the first 15 minutes of the movie. The Phoenix storyline with Jean Grey handled poorly. It makes Xavier look like a fucking dick, the way how he sheltered Jean as a child. None of these characters I care about anymore because Jean's now evil, and then she kills as many people as she kills. So okay, fine, granted she's at her most powerful. But at the end of the movie, they kill her. They kill Jean Grey. And they kill Xavier, but Xavier's such a dick in this movie that you almost don't give a fuck. They have Magneto leading this war with the Brotherhood, which is something that should be greatly anticipated after 3 movies, this huge all-out war with the X-Men, and you just don't really care. I don't mind Kitty Pryde and Beast, those additions were fine, but this movie is just a jumbled mess. Nothing Magneto does in this movie makes any fucking sense. The way how even Mystique gets the cure and she's completely discarded. Number 8, X-Men Origins Wolverine. And I know some people would put this as their least favorite. Wonder why I hate The Last Stand more than this. It's because, yeah, this isn't great. It's not. And sure, what they do to Deadpool is such a colossal failure. It's so terrible what happens to Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool in this movie. Even Gambit is wasted here, and I don't think it's Taylor Kitsch's fault. They just don't really do anything with him. You get some appearances of the Blob, fine. And Wolverine has some cool action scenes with Sabretooth. I like Sabretooth in this film. There's things in it that I like. The Antimanium bullet is stupid. I can admit that. It's just, I'm not as angry with this movie because it's not dealing with major X-Men characters like the third one was. And it's not making really dumb decisions with those characters. Number 7, I don't own it. It's X-Men Apocalypse. It's the most recent one. And when I was making this list, I was actually a little surprised on how low I had Apocalypse on the list because I don't hate the movie or even dislike the movie. I didn't love it. I just wasn't blown away by it. There's things in it that I love a lot. There's things in it that I thought was great and I thought really set things up for future movies, or just the Wolverine scene was so fucking epic. There's things in it that I like. I was just underwhelmed by Apocalypse as a villain. Finally a new, fresh mutant villain, and he's just kind of not intimidating, not imposing, very generic. And that hurt me the most, I guess. And also, I didn't mention this in my review because the character's so forgettable in the movie, but the lack of Jubilee is disturbing. They made a big deal about Jubilee's going to be in this movie, and we're going to do stuff with her, and they showed her with the yellow jacket, and I like the actress that they picked for her, but she does next to nothing in the film, and this isn't the first time that they've had Jubilee, even more so in the background of these movies. It's like, either do the character or don't. Like, I'd rather that than you do this back and forth and make her a character that nobody really knows or cares about unless you've watched the 90s show, and that just hurts those fans more. I guess the more I'm talking about it, the more I am realizing that I have more issues with it. But in any event, number 6, The Wolverine. And I almost wanted to put this higher, but looking at the other movies, number 6 is where this belongs, because it's obviously a vast improvement of X-Men Origins. That goes without saying. And I love the setting. I love that it is the first X-Men movie after The Last Stand, technically, because they did a bunch of prequels after this. And this film gets really dark and gritty with the Wolverine character. Hugh Jackman is, I think, at his finest, like when he's in the jungle with the long beard and he's just alone and sheltered. Reminds me of Old Man Logan in a lot of ways, and I love picking up with this character and when he is at his angriest and is feeling the most loss. His love for Jean is something that's really explored here, and sure, you might want to pick some qualms over the fact that, well, Jean was married to Scott, and was she really Wolverine's true love? But the fact that he thinks of her that way, that's why I think it works. I love him in Japan. I love the action that goes on, like him on top of the train. Great stuff. Making him vulnerable by having him lose his healing powers was a smart way to go. A lot of good things work. My only issue is that at the end of the movie, where it comes time for Wolverine to fight Silver Samurai, they make Silver Samurai this big giant Transformers robot. It immediately takes me out of it. It's just yet another big action thing of him fighting this big huge thing. And Fox always does that. Fox just has a thing where, like, they want to take Deadpool and sew his mouth shut and have him just be this big huge mutant, really nothing of a character, but just something for Wolverine to fight. Or they want to just have this, they want to change these characters for purposes that don't really matter. They just think bigger is better. Number 5, X-Men the movie, the first X-Men film. And I remember, like, obviously as a kid I loved the 1990s cartoon, and so I love the X-Men, but I never really thought that we could do a movie ever, like a live action movie. And then this came out. When I watched it, I couldn't believe how serious they were taking this material, how serious these characters were. The scene where Rogue first discovers her powers, she's afraid, she runs away, meets Wolverine at that bar where he's a cage fighter, and just those two characters bonding and connecting, I feel that. I feel like just the realness of how these characters feel. They feel sheltered, they feel like outcasts. For the time, for the year 2000, that's what you had to do. You had to sort of get people accustomed to this type of material, because of course now we can go bigger and better and more comic book, but then that was the right tone for it. Number 4, X-Men First Class. And First Class was a film that came after The Last Stand, that came after X-Men Origins Wolverine, at a time where people thought, okay, this X-Men franchise is dead. Fox doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. They're fucking up movie after movie. And I think people probably either didn't go see this or they went into this very low. But seeing how smart it was to set it in the 60s, to do a prequel. Because people don't love prequels, but I think a prequel for the X-Men series was needed. Desperately needed. Magneto has one of the most fascinating backstories ever with Auschwitz and the Holocaust, and what that motivation does for him, and how he's spending this whole movie trying to get revenge on these people, and Xavier's trying to lure him away from that dark side, but he just can't help it, and he embraces being Frankenstein's monster. Like, I love all of the Magneto stuff here. It was a big risk, but they did it, and for me it works. Number 3, I wanted to rate this higher, but number 3 is a pretty good spot. Deadpool. Deadpool, I can see some people saying it's their favorite, because it is so fresh, it is so different when it comes to Fox and their X-Men movies. Deadpool is a character you can do that with, you can have that much fun with, you can be self-aware with. And Ryan Reynolds was obviously born to play this character. It's been said before, and I don't mind saying it again. The 10 plus years that he put in to get this movie made, the redemption that he wanted to have from the origins, what they did with him there, and just why this movie worked so well. The people who made this movie, the fact that it was a smaller budget and it wasn't as hovered over by executives at Fox, like, it was a passion project. It was like, we need to stay true to this character. Like, the marketing behind this movie, a lot of that is the reason why this is Fox's highest grossing X-Men movie to date. That says a lot for the potential of this character, for the appeal of this character, for what you can do with this character to make the superhero genre different, feel different, be more fun. But number two, X-Men Days of Future Past. When I first saw this film, when I heard that they were doing this, I thought, wow, speaking of ambitious, speaking of big, speaking of much needed for the franchise. As good as First Class was, this was taking it to a new level. This was, you're taking the original cast, and we're bringing them back for probably the last time, and you're seeing them at a point in the future where it's almost an apocalypse type setting. The Sentinels are coming, and they're wiping out all mutants. The Sentinels is something that, like, we were not getting in the movies for whatever reason, and to finally see them and how advanced they were and how unstoppable they were. Wolverine in the 70s with the First Class cast was great. New dynamic. James McAvoy as Xavier really shows his acting chops in this film. The fact that he doesn't really want to be the Xavier that we know, that he's almost a junkie. Really great twist with the character. Michael Fassbender once again brings new dimensions to Magneto. Jennifer Lawrence, this is the best we've seen her as Mystique in this film, and the fact that she is so important to the story. I loved just so much great stuff in this film. I loved it. And for a while, I was thinking that this was my favorite one. My favorite X-Men movie, I thought, was Days of Future Past. That ending where Wolverine wakes back up in the current timeline and everybody's back. We undo the events of The Last Stand, which is pretty much why this movie was made. But then, if you rewatch X-Men 2, X-Men United, if you watch this movie and you see that opening intro with Nightcrawler in the White House and how awesome that is and how innovative that was for 2003. They weren't doing stuff like that with superhero movies back then. This is the first X-Men movie to really go full X-Men. And the story's so great. William Stryker as a villain, this is the best William Stryker that we've had. I know that they're still doing stuff with that character now, but it'll never be better than what they do here in this movie and how that ties into Wolverine's origin. Like, the flashes of what happened to him is 100 times better than what they did in X-Men Origins. Just how brutal that looked. The school being attacked. I love Wolverine for the first time slicing people up, where Magneto was in the plastic prison, but he manipulates and gets his way out of it to try to kill humans yet again. That was great. The characters are so well fleshed out. Sure, Cyclops takes a backseat. That's probably the only blemish against this film, but everything else works. Everything else is tight. The fight that Wolverine has with Lady Deathstrike is something to be seen. It's the price of admission alone to see those two butt heads and go at it. I think Halle Berry as Storm isn't too bad in this movie. I love the self-sacrifice that Jean Grey gives. And this movie proves that it doesn't have to be this big, huge spectacle, this big, huge CGI fest, this big, huge end-of-the-world type plot. No, you just give me good character moments, great character moments, characters that you care about in a story that's worth watching, and that's why this is the best X-Men movie. Days of Future Past is a close second, but this still, for me, takes the cake. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of my list? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Write your list down. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later!